Welcome to the Mark Attwood Show, Adventures in a Cosmic Suit, Saturday, 22nd of January. What an interesting time. I watched Micheál Martin, the Taoiseach of Ireland, last night, proudly proclaim that he's lifting all the restrictions and it's all because of the vaccine. It's all because of them. What a lovely fella. There's a reason why people in Ireland call him Micheál Martin. That's all I'm saying. But I'm going to talk. We're going to have a positive chat today. And to do that, I can't do it on my own. So I'm joined by the amazing Andrea Foulkes. Hello.
Hi, Mark. I'm in Glastonbury in the Isle of Avalon at the moment. I love Ireland, though.
Yeah, well, I love Avalon and Glastonbury. I did my first peyote ceremony in a wigwam with a Mexican chief overlooking on the ley line in Glastonbury, overlooking the Tor.
Very nice.
It was, yeah, life-changing experience. So yeah, it's an interesting place, Glastonbury, isn't it?
It is. I've been here, 9 years now? Not that I'm here all the time. I like to be in Sedona more or Hawaii more, but I'm stuck here right now.
Don't we
I go
all?
along the ley line of sort of Cornwall to Glastonbury a lot. I like to go along that ley line.
Yeah, I love Cornwall as well. Oh, one of my favorite places. And that goes right down through that place where they just had the summit, the G20.
Yeah,
Isn't it?
I've got my little beach shack, which you'd like my story of how I bought my beach shack. I'd never been to Cornwall. Back in 2007, I was in London meditating. I was just like laying there meditating. And then I just got this vision of this little white clapperboard chalet with baby blue windows. And I got the message, if you Google it, you'll find it. And it took me 3 days. And I found the exact thing on the beach in Cornwall opposite the G7 summit.
What a spot.
Yeah, what a spot. Who would have known? So it is quite powerful down there, and that ley line goes along there. And I think there's like a Stargate portal there as well. I mean, they're all over the place, but they're obviously linked to different ET races. And
So I should look into the ley lines here because the energy here is very powerful, but I've never got round to looking at the ley lines. I'm a bit of an idiot in that respect. I should have done that.
yeah, there's loads in Ireland because Ireland's a really powerful portal, because I think in the ancient times, the ancient Egyptians would either go energetically to Ireland or they would physically travel to Ireland because it had access to the 9 dimensions to leave out of the grid of the matrix.
Well, I've been saying for a long time, Ireland is extremely important to everything that's going on, which is the reason why it's been hammered so hard by the cabal, not by the British. The British were the face of the enemy. And they were the British. I'm not saying anybody watching this great. It was the British. Well, yeah, it was the British, but they're the puppets, the same as everybody else who runs the world is. And the did you know that the Bible was actually written in Irish?
I knew the Bible was written in Aramaic text 12,000 years before it was written as the Bible that it is now.
Yeah, well, the Ireland is the seat of all civilization. And that's why, it's so funny. I was going to go for a walk this afternoon up a place here called Carrickeel, which it's got government signs outside. Do not mess with this, blah, blah, blah. And then other signs saying these are the ancient megalithic tombs. They're not tombs. It's like all the portal tombs all around Ireland. They're not tombs. They're portals. That's why they're called portals. So they hide it in your face. And even down to on the lake here, there's an ancient thing on one of the islands in the lake, and the Irish government just go around all the time, just chiseling things into these things to make them seem like they were Christian and they're really new. Well, just a few hundred or a few thousand years old, as opposed to what they really are. So yeah, that's all fascinating. Anyway, I've got to introduce you to people who've never seen you. I know you're famous and everything, but
Not really.
but if anybody watching my channel in America goes, "Who's this woman?" Just give us a bit of a history, because you've got a very interesting history, Andrea.
I've been knocking around a while now, I think. I had a big awakening. Was it? God, it's 20. I was going to say, I'm so used to saying 20 recently. It's actually 22 years ago. I went from being probably awake as a child, like a lot of us. We had experiences, probably quite intuitive. And then I had this big kind of galactic awakening, like the veil of illusion was lifted from me, the same as I hear from clients. This big veil lifted. I was levitating. I was doing light language and almost like this kind of stuff, rewiring myself for about 3 months back in the day, back in about 2000, 2001 to 2002. And then obviously 9/11 happened. I was getting all these channelings about world events, things that were going on. And I had a background of modeling, working on QVC as well, guest presenting. And then after this big awakening, you know, I was being told, you know, about why it was happening, all these things. And like a lot of people, I kind of trusted fairly easily, and I was fairly fearless. So that's, you know, a prime thing for being awakened. There were all kinds of mystical wooey things happening, but I kind of bizarrely, like a lot of people, took it in my stride. And at the time, thankfully, I read Barbara Masiniak's Brings of the Dawn book, which I think really helped me at the time, and the right people came into my reality. So after the 9/11 thing, I read a book called The Psychic Detective, and I just opened that book and it had the head of the Spiritualist Church telephone number on it. And I just rang them and said, oh, hello, I've got all these channelings about what's going on in the world. And I'm a psychic. It was like almost in my naivety of just ringing. And he said, oh, funny you should call. I've just had a TV program on the phone wanting someone psychic to go on. You should go on. So like 24 hours later, I'm on Kilroy. But I'd already been on Kilroy. That was a TV show in the UK.
I was on Kilroy about 3 times.
But the bizarre thing is, I'd been on Kilroy a year earlier when I got mugged and strangled and pinned to the floor outside my flat. And I ended up in Kilroy there talking about random stop and search policies in London. I'd always had this kind of weird experience of life. So I go on Kilroy, I talk about being psychic and all those things. And, you know, then I start getting clients at the time because I worked for QVC, Aveda, which was a sort of cosmetic company that probably people in America would know. They said to me, oh, why don't you come into our stores and give some talks on all the stuff you come and talk about, you know, you're like, blah, 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 crystals, this, me. And so I started doing all these talks in their stores about chakras and crystals, and they loved it. And they were like, why don't you make a flyer and you could get some clients? And so then I started energetically, naturally, after this crazy 3 months of big awakening channelings. I mean, there were so many mystical things and people, synchronicities, people I met, all kinds of stuff happening. That they said, you know, make a flyer. By then, I'd started to see people's past lives, but from a 3D earthy perspective, I couldn't see the benefit of me being able to see their past lives. I thought I need to learn regression hypnosis. So I learned regression hypnosis, but I was already doing what I called my hand waftings. So I was doing these hand waftings over people.
I do those.
Yeah. And I think that was what I did in some past life in Egypt. So I was doing these like hand healing waftings. I don't do the hand waftings anymore. So I learned regression. I learned inner child healing. I learned ancestral healing. I learned how to deal with entities, although in how I work now is completely different than what I learned. So I learned all this stuff really quickly. And the channelings were telling me, you're going to have to stand on a very big soapbox for what you believe in and speak your truth as you know it to be. So I'm like, right, okay. And by that time, I was still working occasionally on QVC, and I'd just sit there and I just wouldn't speak. I was just like beaming I had a really high frequency at that point, and literally my body was vibrating that much. I was literally losing physical density. So it was at a point where I think I could have stayed, which I did choose to stay, or I could have left, but I chose to stay. But for 3 months, while this really high vibrational stuff was happening to me, I literally, like, everything was love. Everything was love. I was just in this space of, you know, utopia of joy and everything. And I think what it left me with after that was, although I came more grounded and into my body, I've never really been scared or fearful or upset about anything to a huge degree. I've kind of taken things more in my stride. So digressing slightly, but back to the point is, so after all that, I got a phone call one day saying, Andrea, do you want to go on This Morning? Which This Morning for American audiences is like Good Morning America. It's a big TV show in the UK, and it used to be a lot better back in 2004 when I was working on it. So it was a weekly daily show, and I went on this show. I regressed the host of the show, which was Philip Schofield and Fern Britton. We filmed this VT footage. I start the show January 2004. I go on, we show this footage of their regressions. You could hear a pin drop. Everybody was like, wow, this is great stuff. And literally they said, can you come back every week till we make your own show? So I went back every week regressing celebrities and members of the public, but I was pushing for members of the public because I really wanted to show the healing aspects of regression. And if you go to my YouTube channel, right back to the very beginning, you can see these regressions with members of the public and with celebrities. And then they made me this show called Have I Been Here Before? So I then did 2 series of a show called Have I Been Here Before? That was just celebrities back to past lives. And then in 2013, in 2012, I was on a BBC show called The Big Question. In the middle of all this, I used to do like Big Brother's Little Brother, X Factor Extra, anything where they could bring in a spiritual aspect to it. So then I go on this BBC Big Question show, and it was like reliving the witch trials of Salem. They really all turned on me in 2012. And anyone who sees it goes, oh, you did really well, you held your own. But actually, it crucified me inside, and it was like reliving the witch trials of Salem. And it took me a few months to clear all that past life stuff that it triggered. And I could see it as I was on the show, because they're live shows, I could see it happening, and I could see what was happening, and they were all turning on me. But looking back now, I can watch it. But at the time, it hurt so much to watch this, and I had to clear that past life. So then they invited me back on a year later, and I thought, well, I must go back and see and test if I've cleared this past life, and I mustn't be because to me, sometimes it's egocentric when you think, oh, I'm here to heal and save humanity. That's quite egocentric sometimes. So I thought I must check that I'm really doing this, because I do want to speak my truth, but I must check that I've cleared this stuff in myself. So I go back on the show, and we were talking. I was meant to be talking about spiritual stuff, but they were doing a thing about food tax. And I don't know why, but just out of my mouth came, well, you've got to look at who owns the food and drug industry, and the Illuminati families own the food and drug industry.
Did you do that live on TV?
Yeah, I was just going off on one, and I just kept on going like, brrr. And then I went on about it being a holographic universe and everything, and they're just looking at me horrified kind of thing.
They're like, get her agent on the phone.
And I felt so good in myself. I thought, oh yeah, I feel really good. And yet what I'd said was more shocking than what I said the year before. But I felt, yeah, I feel really good about that, yes. And after that, I never worked on TV again.
There's a surprise.
Yeah, I never worked on radio, and no magazine ever called me either.
How weird. I wonder why.
But I felt really happy. I felt really free, like I'd done what I came to do, and I was to my perception, I was out of the matrix.
Well, I hear this a few times, and I try to teach people, if you just start speaking what you actually think and feel, it is incredibly liberating. It does make you very happy, because for the first time in your life, you're actually being honest to who you are. And it always reminds me of that scene in Monty Python, which one? Is it the Holy Grail? No, Life of Brian. When the guy jumps out of the pit, he's going to be stoned for saying Jehovah, and he just goes, Jehovah, 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 just keeps saying it, and then they start throwing more stones at him, because it's very liberating.
Yeah, and I feel like I've got the Tourette's of truth. I just can't help but say the truth. And the whole thing is, when, like you said, it's like when you give yourself permission to speak the truth, not only do you feel better, but that to me is the gateway of healing your body.
Yeah, because the truth has a vibration. Truth has a frequency. And the more people that get, and it's spreading like wildfire.
Exactly. And now is that time.
Yeah, I mean, I mentioned the Irish Prime Minister last night. What was interesting about watching him, was that he had a quiver in his voice as he was saying the stuff that he was saying, and I was like, "You are I mean, he was acting really. They're great actors. They are actors. That's all they are, right?
That's
But
brilliant.
the quiver in his voice was really interesting. It was like, but you know, truth vibrations. I mean, David Icke wrote a book in '98 called Truth Vibrations and talked about this time coming. And that's what really interested me, because vibration, it's all about vibrational
Oh,
frequency. All of it, right?
all of it, you know. And one of the things, you know, because I work with people, and my big passion about what I do isn't, you know, like when I did the stuff on TV, they're like, "Oh, can we prove you lived before?" You know, I'm not interested in can you prove whether we've lived before. I'm like, I'm interested in healing your body without being cut open or taking pharmaceutical drugs.
I know how we can. I know how we can prove it. I've just seen something. Let's go back in this.
Oh yeah, the Doctor Who police. Is that a biscuit tin?
No, it just arrived. It just arrived in my room. There's a very small Time Lord in here. Anyway, sorry, I just couldn't resist that because it's staring at me next. It sits next to my Buddha over there. Yeah, so you don't want to prove that. You want to do other stuff.
Yeah, and you know, the other thing, talking about the throat, is, you know, often I see people as clients, and I work on Skype, but you know, I see some people in person for regression, but I work a lot over Skype reading. I'm very specific, the emotional Akashic record. So I'm going back into the timelines of your emotions. I don't look at the people because that puts me off, and also it stops them from dropping into their emotional self, because when you've got to look in a camera like this, you're like, but so you're not going, you're in your ego, so you're not going deep into your emotional self. And then when somebody can do what I can do, the skills and gifts I've got to identify the origin of your emotional trauma, so then we go into those Akashic records and we heal that from the origin of it, and you drop into your emotional body. And then I sing light language codes. And from people who are not familiar with light language, they're like, although these are big words to use, but it's like polyphonic overtoning and
Polyphonic overtoning. I like that.
Because I speak light language, and then my friend who's a music teacher, she said, "You're actually doing polyphonic overtoning." And then I put polyphonic overtoning into YouTube, and a girl had like 1 million hits because she did polyphonic overtoning. But if you say light language, although the spiritual community, I think, are quite aware of what light
all of my viewers know what light language is, but I've never heard of polyphonic overtoning.
Polyphonic overtoning. So I think that's the 3D version of a facet of light language, but with high vibrational sound frequencies, and then obviously the other galactic languages of your soul woven in. And as we know, not all light languages are the same. So if you don't like some light languages, you know, that's maybe for a reason. Maybe those people are channeling a language that is not conducive for you on a soul level. So be discerning. It's not like all light languages are the same.
That is interesting. I was just interested to see whether if anybody's actually looking for polyphonic overtoning. What do you reckon?
Well, they were on YouTube, because there was like 1 million people had looked at this girl doing polyphonic overtoning, and they must have put in polyphonic overtoning to find.
Well, look. So here's light language, right? As a keyword.
Yeah.
5,400 people a month type that into Google in the US.
Yeah.
And then polyphonic overtoning. This is just my geekiness.
You're so good at this. This is your thing.
This is my geekiness, right? Let's see this one. Polyphonic overtoning. I think this is it. 0.
That's weird. So why is this girl, I wonder, had?
Well, it's probably just you know, viral because it sounds interesting. But definitely yeah, do some polyphonic overtoning. It's a good name for a band, the Polyphonic Overtones.
Yeah, the polyphonic. It sounds like it already exists, so it must be good.
Well, it does now. We've said it.
I was speaking light language as a child, but obviously not big booming it out kind of thing. And then I started doing that publicly in 2011, and I did a video for YouTube on clearing fear with light language, and people seem to really love it, because I think for a lot of people, they're, you know, obviously people's fear is, oh my god, I'm going to do something that's wooey wooey. But you know, in my confidence of doing my wooey wooey stuff, which was, you know, 2004, you know, not that many people were doing past life regression, and certainly nobody was doing it on TV, on mainstream terrestrial TV. And because I had the courage to just be myself, which is all you can ever really be, it worked.
Well, I find it very interesting because for many reasons, because obviously your path was to bring that into the minds of lots and lots of people. Lots of people sat at home watching This Morning, which is a lot of people. My mum, people like that, and it has become. People seem to know what past life regression is and things like that now. It seems to be a more mainstream idea. You can talk to anybody about it, and they've heard of it.
Well, I think what I loved about doing it, and the thing is though, I loved seeing clients. My thing, and that's maybe why people haven't heard of me so much, is, even when I had an agent and a branding agent, she was like, we need to see Arcadia Group on Friday. I'm like, can't see them on Friday. I've got clients coming from Scotland. And so, my passion was for the last 20 years regressing people. So I doubt very many people will have had that level of clients to work with. I mean, it was like endless. I'd be getting 1,000 emails a day when I'd be on TV.
Yeah.
But what I loved about it, and I do radio shows like, whether you love him or hate him, I did like James Well radio show, which in the UK would attract a lot of people, like lorry drivers, football. It was Talk Sport, wasn't it? It was. So I'd get blokes ringing me up, and I'd love it because they're like, listen, I was driving my lorry on the M5 and I was listening to you, and I'm thinking, cool, I think she's right. And so all their mystical experiences they'd come and see me, and I'd love it because they're like, I am so out of my comfort zone coming to see you, but I'm coming because I think you can help me. And I did help them, and it was really a joy to help these guys who this wasn't their path, and that's what I loved about TV, was you get people who just sat on the sofa eating crisps going, you know what, I think she might be right. I've had experiences.
Do you know what? I've found it really interesting since I started this channel, because I've had a lifetime of interesting, weird, spiritual things, right? And you learn to keep quiet about it and don't bring it up at the dinner table and don't bring it up at the party and stuff like that. But then when all this started opening up, I would just spill it all out. I got thrown out of parties. People would just think I was nuts for years and years. Lost loads of friends on Facebook. People get really aggressive with me about being woo-woo. They're like, you're a business advisor. What are you going on about? And then I started this channel. I started talking about demons. And after I did this show with Charlie Ward, it all came out. I didn't plan it. And afterwards I was like, oh, fuck, I'm all over the internet talking about demons. Oh, I'm ruined, right? And then all these emails came in, and and it's so important that people who can speak about this, and clearly you're an amazing communicator, do talk about it, because it does bring people out and go, oh, because we put do you find that people sort of lock these things away in little boxes in their head, and something triggers those to open, and when they open, they're like, because that's happened to me loads of times, remembering.
I think people, it was hilarious a bit in the beginning, because people would come and see me and say, I've seen you on TV. I was already got clients even before I did the TV stuff, but obviously it just went ballistic. And they come and they go, I'd like to pay you in cash because I don't want my husband or my wife knowing I to see you. I'm like, my God, it's like I'm a prostitute.
It's like going to a prostitute. I don't know anything about that. I'm just saying,
it had that level of shame. And I can remember one client once, I've seen a lot of very successful businessmen as clients. People would be shocked if they knew who some of my clients were. But at the same time, what I loved is I'd get people who are going, listen, I'm a cleaner. I've come to see you. I know you can help me. So I love that I got that polarity of clients. And one client once, he said, oh, the taxi driver couldn't find where you were. And he said, are you sure you're not going to Alcoholics Anonymous? Because that's where they meet, at that building there. And he went, oh, you've had me. That's actually where I'm going. And he said, because he didn't want to tell him he's actually coming to see me, which I thought was hilarious. He'd rather be seen to going to Alcoholics Anonymous than actually coming to see me. But I think the shame's going, because like the other week, I did a interview with Elena Danan, who's written a book on alien star species, and it's a great book. She's drawn all the
it's next to my bed.
Yeah.
I
Well,
haven't managed to read it yet because I fall asleep every time I read. When I go to bed, I'm asleep within 5 minutes, so I never finish a book. I shouldn't
yeah,
put it there.
what amazed me is that I did this interview with Elena, Danny Henderson, and I the other week, and within days, like 50,000 people had watched this. But it wasn't that. It was when I read the comments on Elena's page, I was like, wow, people really get this. And we were talking about entities, and and my big thing that I'm really, really good at, and even when I was doing these past life regressions on TV, I was doing spirit releasement and releasing entities on people. And when we went to do these standalone shows, I really pushed for it more and more, because when we were doing the ones on This Morning, sometimes there would be discrepancies and they wouldn't add up. And it was because I knew it wasn't their past lives. I knew it was entities attached. And they said, well, you weren't doing this in the beginning. And I thought, well, you weren't researching the past lives they'd come up with. And now I'm under like, oh, she's not accessing truth. But what it was is it was entities past lives, and it's very, very complex. And so we talked about this the other week, and people truly got it. And I think most people, well, you know the statement when people say, oh my God, they get triggered, especially in relationships. People get triggered and they go into some ranty, crazy, like lunatic mode. And they're like, oh my God, I was not myself. I was like, I was taken over, possessed. Well, you were.
Yeah, that's happened to me. That's happened to me.
Yeah.
I've got a friend ring me up the other day. Same thing happened in our relationship, and I'm saying the same thing to everybody. This is the time to clean house. You have to clean house. You have to protect yourself, and you have to cut out alcohol. You have to cut out the things that they find their way in. I know. I want to ask you. If I interrupt you, I probably have, haven't
No,
I?
I'm a queen of tangents.
No, there'll be people in the comments go, "Why do you keep interrupting your guests?" Well, because I've had a thought, and I'm going to ask you a question. I worked in TV for a little bit
Oh, did you?
in the 90s, yeah, and
What
it
did
was
you
in.
do?
I did a bit of comedy and stuff. It was
Can
interesting.
we find it?
Yeah, I'll send you a link. There's actually a show on my channel called "How I Called Out Fake News 25 Years Ago," because I created a local journalist character, and the thing that we put out on TV was we actually filmed at the This Morning studios when it was in Liverpool, when Richard and Judy were there, and I got interviewed by the newsreader as part of the show and a part of the comedy show. And in this storyline, the journalist, not me, he murdered an old woman and he blackmailed a local councillor with paedophilia pictures just to get on the news so that he could launch his TV show. And so I was calling out fake news because he was the epitome of fake news. So so you can go watch that, and that's me breaking down one of those comedy shows. But working in these fields, I'm not going to ask you to talk about anybody specifically, but you mentioned a few people that I know are connected to other very, very, very dark people. And I'm wondering, and also you got cut at a certain point in time. Was it 2012, you said?
2012. No, 2012 was the first time I did the big question, and then when I really that was 2013. But I did get asked back, ironically, a few years ago. I broke my ankle in 2019, and that's another thing. I broke my ankle. Now that's weird how I broke my ankle, because I don't believe I actually fell over, but I actually live really near where the Glastonbury Festival site is, and 3 minutes before the main stage on the Saturday, I walked to my doorstep with a step like that, and I literally just crumpled to the floor. And I know they had some frequencies. I won't say what they were, but I think that might have been a contributing factor. I fell to the floor and I displaced my inner ankle bone, broke my outer ankle bone, and tore all my ligaments. And I called an ambulance. I waited 8 hours for an ambulance. And in retrospect, I wish that I knew what I know now. But anyway, I called the ambulance. They said, you're going to need surgery. I said, I don't think so. With love and respect for the work you've done for the last 20 in your career, what I've done for the last 20 years, just put a plaster cast on and I'll be going. So I didn't walk for 5 months, but I healed my ankle without surgery, and it was non-union. And everyone, even my clients who are doctors in America, ER doctors, said, I don't think you'll heal that. It's non-union. And I did. I've healed it. Even my local GP went, I'm going to write a letter saying we've not healed it. And so I did panic, but that was about 3 months into it. And I went to see the head of the Foot Council in the UK. He's the top guy. And he went, no, you've healed it. Because he was older. You know, he was old school. He's seen it all. And he was like, no, you've healed it.
Exactly. The body doesn't know how to work against
I don't even know if I would have fared very well in the last 2 years if I'd have got pins and plates in my ankles. I think I wouldn't have necessarily even be here, I don't think.
Yeah, I understand what you mean. And so where I'm going with this is that some of the some of the people that you may have done some work with may have had, and this is actually relevant to right now. And the reason it's relevant is because I did I've been talking about entities for quite a long time now. I've had trouble with entities for 52 years. I understand entities very, very well, with my own battles with them, because I'm a certain type of character. I kind of like, if an entity is a big red bus, I just throw myself in front of the bus, and then I get up afterwards, going, "Is that all you've got?" That's what I do. But
and that's kind of the approach to, most people are frightened of them if they see them coming through other people, and I've seen them coming through people in my family my whole life, even when I didn't know they were entities, but I was never frightened, and I think that's the thing. I've never been frightened of them, even when I've done this regressing people. Sorry, I'm sat in a weird way. Even when I was regressing people, and, even when I was like, oh my God, because, I think people go and start doing this, and you've got to be pretty strong to be able to deal with this, because, some of these entities are really snarly and nasty. And, especially if you've regressed someone and they've drifted into the background, their personality. So how I operate, your personality as Mark would go into the background, and I would pull the entities forward, and there might be more of one of them, and it's quite complex. It's not complicated, but it's complex. So I've got to work out how they've attached to you, and how they taught me. There is something called the Spirit Releasement Foundation, but I didn't learn from them, but I learned from someone else. But what they taught me was really limited in the truth of what actually happens with people. So I have to use my intuition to override the supposed textbook way of getting rid of entities. And I just can tell they're there, and I call them forth, and they can be really nasty. They can say, F off, I'm not talking to you. And I'm like, oh, charming. Well, I'll keep on talking to you. And oh, you think you're clever, don't you? And then, all this happens. And then sometimes the client will go right back into the background. And I mean, I've seen people slide onto the floor. I mean, this is as scary as it gets. I've seen them slide onto the floor, foaming at the mouth, going, oh my God, you've got to help me. And this thing's like, rah! And it is quite a task to detach them in the extreme cases. In the cute cases, they're like a child, and you'll see the client's face literally transfigure into a child, and it'll be, I'm only 5. And, we find out, were you in an accident? Were you in an illness? How did you attach to my client? And then you ask them, what year is it? Oh, it's 1500 and whatever. I'm like, no, it's not. It's 2022. They're like, no ways, no way. Because they're stuck in another time. They don't know it's this time. Now, that's not all of them, because they're not all the same. And some of them have come from other dimensions, other planets, however you want to describe vibrational difference. So they've attached, sometimes they've attached not even in this incarnation, they've attached in other lifetimes. So this client has never been without these entities attached to them, affecting their consciousness for many lifetimes. And sometimes they've been galactically affecting my client from another star system even. So then you have to put out to them to release, you know, the people who are in charge, because sometimes that being you're speaking to who's never had a physical body in this dimension. So some of them have had a physical body on this planet and been a human, and that's most entities. Okay. And then you've got the other lot that have never had a physical body and never been in incarnation on this planet, but they've got in and attached to the auric field, the energy field, and then thus the physical body of my client. And over time, they've got more and more control of my client, depending on the emotional state of my client and how much my client has given into that emotion, depending on obviously what's happened in their life that has affected them, and they've not been able to process this rage, anger, fear, bitterness, betrayal, jealousy. You know, these are lower vibrational emotions, so you can't deny that you've got them, but you've got to process them, because you're like a vibrational match to Klingons otherwise.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's you know, when you've got entities that are not from this, even never been in a physical form, they're not even from this galaxy, and then people have these problems all their life, and it's nothing to do with them. It's it's like, it just makes this whole puzzle of life even more of a pickle.
Yeah, and when you regress people, you know, I think the thing is you know, the hooking for people to come to see me because of the TV stuff in the beginning, having done this for so many years, was they go, yeah, I'm open to seeing a past life. Yeah, you know, fair dues. That's what I've come to see her. I signed up to that. That's really what I'm about. And then often I wouldn't even be able to get into their past lives. And a lot of people come to see me saying, oh, I've been to see another therapist, but they say I can't be regressed. It's impossible to be regressed. And I'm like, there's, you know, usually 2 or 3 reasons why you can't be regressed. You're either a full-on narcissist, and it's highly unlikely any narcissist going to reach out for any form of, you know, therapy or inner journey work. They're just not that open to it. So the other thing is they're kind of borderline moving towards narcissism, but they're not a full-on, you know, people say people are narcissists, but they're not. They're showing personality traits of narcissism. They're not a full-on narcissist. So they've probably got some trauma that has made them extremely controlling. They're very controlling. So you struggle to regress people who are really controlling. And then you've got the other lot of people, which is a lot of people, is an average therapist is good, but, and you know, you're wasting your time and your money to a degree if that therapist cannot do past life regression, inner child healing, ancestral healing, and spirit releasement. If they don't have those 4 skills to be able to use in that session, because you need to weave between all of them, because the minute the client's blocked and they're like, I can't do what you're trying to guide me to do,
Yeah.
more than likely I know an entity is attached. So then I address it as if there's an entity attached. And of course, then they start twitching and, you know, kind of, she's found me out, you know. Yeah. And then you've got to be able to do that. Whereas when they've been to see someone else who's well-meaning, but doesn't have those skill sets, they just think they can't be regressed.
It reminds me of when I was sailing across the channel and I jumped off this boat and I dislocated this finger here, and it was at that angle. And it was a Sunday, and it was Alderney, which is a tiny little island in the channel. And the only person who could fix me was a vet.
Probably lucky it was a vet.
Actually, yeah, I was. You know, but I went to a vet and I was like, really? Does he know how this was done? But it's also really interesting how people give so. I mean, how they're getting away with all of this because they believe that the government knows about science. They believe that doctors have got their best intentions at heart. They believe that without thinking for themselves, and it's just extraordinary. I mean, I'm doing a course at the moment with Jeremy Ayres called Maximize the Light in Your Cosmic Suit. And it's fascinating that he's bringing 30 years experience to the table and saying, look, in my experience, this is what I've seen creates incredible healing, incredible results. And people are still resisting it because they're like, well, you know, I can't eat like that, or I can't do this and I can't do that. And God bless them, everybody that's doing it is trying to do it. But we get so attached to certain things. And I think the entities kind of keep us attached to that because the whole system that we've been in is entity driven.
Pardon me. And they keep them away from their deepest, darkest trauma. And that's people's fear that they're going to have to go back to either their deepest, darkest trauma that they are either aware of or in total denial of. You know, and people are frightened that they won't be that either the pain and the trauma will never end, which it does very quickly, when someone can help you and guide you into it, depending on how many layers of trauma and denial there is. And of course, you never coerce them into cell memory, which is bringing up the memories. You, especially if it's really traumatic stuff that is of a sexual nature, you never want to give any false memory to them. And there is something called the False Memory Association, and they did visit me years ago, and they were quite happy when I said, oh, well, maybe those memories are some entities attached, and they quite liked that, and off they went. Rather than, you know, saying, well, you know, I've got members of my family bringing up memories of trauma and accusing people in the family of things. So you have to be very, very careful in that realm, that that person is genuinely accessing their own memory. You're not coercing them in any way. That trauma is coming to the surface, and they can heal their physical body by healing their emotional body. So if you heal your emotional body, the byproduct of healing your emotional body is your physical body's going to heal. You know, it's like eyesight. Even let's take wearing glasses, you know. So if you have a story running from childhood of I don't want to see, I don't want to hear, so you might have hearing issues. With your eyesight, the more stress that we get, it pushes on the optic nerve at the background. And if you're living in a reality where you don't want to see things, you know, I've been a victim of this myself in my own journey. I've never actually worn glasses, but I did get a prescription for glasses when I was dating a psychopathic con man, and I wasn't.
Just toss that in there.
And I wasn't trusting my insights in my dreams. I wasn't trusting what I was seeing. You know, my mind, my personality was not wanting to believe what I was being shown, and my intuition. And I think this is people's biggest problem is, you know, even when you regress people, they go, oh, I think I made that up, because they believe what they saw on the square box, but they don't believe their inner world, and your inner world is the biggest truth of all. So I ended up getting this prescription for these glasses because I was struggling to see as I was driving at night while I'm dating the psychopathic con man, who is actually encouraging me to get the glasses. And big, long story I won't go into. But once the veil of illusion and truth was revealed to me, without a shadow of a doubt, that I really had to get rid of this person. The minute I sort of ended it once and for all, my eyesight returned.
Wow. That is interesting.
It's that powerful. What do you not want to see? What do you not want to hear? You know, I say this a lot with people's voices. You know, they look like an adult, and then there's this little voice comes out of them. Like, surely that voice can't belong to you. No, because that voice belongs to the traumatized child that fragmented off when you were 5, 6, 7, however old that little voice is. And either it's an entity attached voice, or it's your voice traumatized from when the trauma happened. So I need to take you back to the trauma that happened, and where once you acquired the origin of this squeaky little voice that isn't actually yours. And then with time, as we process all this crap and backlog, your authentic resonance of your voice will return. Like if you look at the YouTube videos from my time on This Morning, at the very beginning on my channel. I mean, it's embarrassing now to look back because I can see people going, oh my God, that woman's voice was so annoying. She was squeaky. But I got taken over by entities when we filmed the first series because...
Well, that's what I was going to ask you.
Yeah, the building we were in, we should not have been filming in that building.
Which one was it? Which one was it?
It was the first series of Have I Been Here Before?
Ah.
And we were filming this series in this building that was really dodgy. I think it had been a shop at one point, been a carpet warehouse, then it had been a church of different denominations. And then some of the people I was regressing were saying, I think that they were if you know what psychometry is, they were psychometrizing the building and saying there were dead people buried underground, and they were tuning into the history of this building. And then the production team said, shall we get a priest? I went, that's not going to help you. I can do more than that can do. But the energy of having to hold space while we were doing this in this building, it kind of took over my voice, and my voice went really squeaky at points in this. And so when we did the second series, I had it written in the contract that I had to approve the location that we were filming in.
Yeah, well, that makes sense. And what you're saying about the voice makes sense as well, because I've been on YouTube since 2004 in different formats, and you can see videos of me from years ago doing like business videos or sales videos and things like that, and my voice is completely different.
And how was it then?
It's like all over the place. Anyway, I think it'd be fun to have a look at one of these while I'm on with you.
It'd be pop luck if you get a squeaky one.
Well, you're going to choose.
Oh, okay.
Okay. Where should we go?
Do you know the one I really like as a regression? As a regression, I love it, is if you go to Paul Ross. Can you find Paul Ross?
I remember Paul. I was just looking at Fern Britton then, remembering she's a bit of a guilty secret. I used to fancy her. I don't know why.
Oh, Fern's lovely. She's a lovely person. Oh, right, there it is. Excuse me pointing at it. It's... It's that one there on the right. Well, it's my right-hand side.
Over here.
Yeah, that Paul Ross one.
Oh, that one there.
No, that one. Yeah, that's it.
That one. So Paul Ross, everybody, is Jonathan Ross. Is his brother, isn't it?
Yeah.
Got these bloody adverts. I don't know what to do about that. I'm gonna have to play it.
I think first and foremost we have to concede.
Sorry about the adverts, everybody. It's Gaia anyway. Here we go.
A Dolly Osmond fan. We have got the perfect director's corners for you.
I've lost it.
Later. But before all that, Paul Ross is here with our regression therapist, Andrea Foulkes. Before we talk to them, let's have a look.
Sorry, Andrea, I can't find the page now.
I'm Paul Ross. I'm about to experience my past lives. I've never been regressed before, and I'm nervous. I think if you ask any bloke what past life really like, I'd like to be like a pirate. I'd like to be a cavalry charging man going against Napoleon at the Battle of Waterloo. I'm probably going to end up being a man who travelled in the 1920s selling dirty postcards.
So I've just found it. Did you want me to rewound?
Minutes.
Go say again.
Move it in to avoid the introduction because it's a bit boring. Just
okay.
Interesting bit there. Yeah, that's probably a good bit. Yeah.
There?
Yeah.
What was he doing? Is he still in business, Paul Ross?
I don't know what he does now.
Yeah. It must be weird being Jonathan Ross's younger, less successful brother.
Yeah.
Tell me about your life.
I'm a man. I'm working. I dig.
What are you digging for?
Silver.
Silver. Whereabouts are you?
It's a town. I have children.
How many children have you got?
3 living.
What do you mean by 3 living? What happened with
3 souls living.
What happened to the others?
The Lord took them.
When did he take them?
At birth.
Were they alive when they were born? Yes. And then how soon did they pass away?
Before baptism.
What about the mother of the children? Who was the mother of the children?
She is from the town.
How do you feel about your wife? What are your emotions towards her?
We are rich. And happy. I have taken my wife's faith. I had fallen from the church and I had borne false witness. I had not taken Mass. I had followed the Lutheran. I was Jerome. I took a new name when I was baptized.
What's your new name? Do you remember your new name?
Gustav.
Why have you taken that name?
Because I had a name from Rome and the old church, and I have a new name. We dig the silver and we make the thaler.
What's that?
Achilles thaler. The coin, the true coin.
The true coin of where, though? Which great place is this?
Every principality.
Which principality are you part of?
Bohemia. I came from the Low Countries to mine the silver. I walked. It took a month. My father sent me from the farm to find work in the mines. I had two brothers. One died on the road with me. Trembling, he had the ague.
What's the ague?
He trembled, he couldn't. I left him, and he, in the ditch.
And how did you feel about that? How emotionally did you
He was
feel?
weak. I slept in the hedges. I fought for a place in the mines. I was 15 summers. Strong. I killed a man
Who did you kill?
for the mine
How did you kill him?
in the dark. He came for me. I killed him. I can no longer dig. My strength is gone on my right side. I have trembling. I'm rich.
What's happening on the last day of that lifetime? What's happening to you then?
The priest is here and I cannot die. I was cast out from the church. 24 summers. My children are not in the church. I want to die.
Why do you want to die?
I'm old. I cannot see.
What life would you have liked?
Sun in the crops. No dead men underground. No water. No soldiers. No silver. No silver. The sun. No silver. No thalers.
In a short while, I'm going to wake you up. 1, 2, lighter and lighter. 3, 4, lighter and brighter. 5, 6, coming out of it. 7, 8, eyes open. 9, 10, wide awake.
Well,
That was like a narrative of a novel. It was absolutely gripping.
ban the witch!
No, stop.
Ooh. Oh, that's so interesting on so many levels.
I think I haven't seen that for years, so I think they show more later of the regression. But when it was interesting because that was in the beginning when I first started doing them for TV. So this was on this morning. And the interesting thing in that is when I tried to bring, it looks like I brought him out of it really harshly. That's not how I actually do it, but it's edited to look like that. And also me asking the questions look inauthentic because I had to do them to camera later because it was a 1-camera film. So if you do, once we went to our own series, we had 3 cameras, but in that I had to ask all the questions back. But when you see that regression with him, you can see his voice. He's really there. I mean,
Yeah.
he denied in his, he sat there denying that he went very deeply. But from my perspective, he went really deeply. And in trying to bring him back out of it, he wouldn't come out of the regression because we had lights on him. And he kept saying, because, you know, he said he'd gone blind, he said he wanted to see the light one more time before he died. And he wouldn't die. Like, I'm like, okay, you're dying now. And then we realized we had to turn the studio lights off for him to die in the past life, because he wasn't, the studio lights were so bright, he thought it was the sunlight.
Yeah, I mean, it's very compelling to watch. It's obviously he's really there. I mean, he's using words like 15 summers, you know, terms like that. But what I found really interesting is what he said. He turned and said to you on set there.
Yeah, burnish is a witch.
Burn the witch. That, you know, there's a lot of truth said in comedy. And I'm talking specifically about these sort of families that work in TV. That's what I'm alluding to without getting you to say anything. Should we watch the rest of this bit?
Yeah, have a look. I can't remember now whether they do, but
no,
I think
it's fascinating, and I've got you on, so we might as well, you know, it's always good.
When we saw the clips earlier, he's acting.
I had been hypnotised before, which I spoke to Andrew about, but not for maybe 15 years, and they said I was a good subject. But what was different about this, and absolutely was not, you know, it took me a while to go under, I think, but because Andrew was also talking about entities and things which seemed slightly too occult, and that disturbed me at the beginning.
But that wasn't to do with this regression, because we're just dealing.
Slightly too occult. Well, that's all I'm saying, Paul.
When I've been hypnotised before, I woke up genuine, and you feel very refreshed. This time, and it wasn't, you know, after we'd finished, Andrew said, "What are you doing tonight?" In fact, it was a while ago. I was off to see the Starsky and Hutch movie, which was the premiere that night. And she said, "You will feel tired tonight." And I was cream crackered that night. I've never felt quite as drained. I hadn't had a drink or anything. I just felt really tired.
You had a headache?
Not so much. I felt really like I was recovering from the flu or something. But I was fine the next day after a good night's sleep. But normally, hypnosis is very refreshing.
Have you seen that?
I'd seen little bits that people had, but I hadn't seen the finished thing, and people have mentioned different things to me about, you know, do you mind? You said you killed somebody. Well, you know, I think
the reason why you went to that life was because what we chatted beforehand was we were looking for some reason to take Paul into regression. So he said he had actually suffered with bad eyesight in this lifetime. So I looked for the key to the bad eyesight. He went blind in that lifetime in the silver mine. So
I must say that, I mean, I certainly believe hypnosis obviously works. I'm a complete skeptic about this regression stuff, because I think if there's a simple explanation and a very complicated one, you're daft to take the complicated one. And the simple one is in a trance, it's like a sleep. And I've had this kind of waking dream, and things are on my mind. I'm getting married at the end of May. I have got lots of brothers. I've got children. We're all kind of a bit money fixated. So in that way, it's almost like acting out the dream and not a past life.
Right, shall we we'll investigate this a little bit further after this, because we're going to have the regression detective after this, isn't it?
Yeah, so then we would have the regression detective.
Oh, sorry.
A Donny Osmond fan.
It's doing this on purpose. Hang on.
Perfect.
Right.
The regression detective was Lionel Fanthorpe. He's really good. He looked great. And the researchers would go and find out whether those past lives existed and what information we had, you know, lay it all up, which I really loved. I loved the format that we used on This Morning. It was really wonderful, and it was low budget, whereas when we went to a standalone show, it became high budget, because then they started to reenact the past lives and dress people up and do big reenactments, and then it got really expensive to reenact. And then when then there was a Granada ITV takeover in the middle between filming the second series and actually airing it. So there was like a couple of years before they aired the second series. And they put these out at 3 o'clock in the afternoon. And there was talk of putting them on prime time, but it never, ever happened.
Yeah. I know what that's like.
Yeah. And then I pitched shows in America, and people couldn't believe that I'd got celebrities to agree to do this.
Yeah, I mean, to be honest, it's very courageous of them to just go and dive in. But I get the feeling with someone like Paul, he was skeptical about it, so he didn't really care what he said, because he was just going to diss it anyway.
Yeah, and it was good that he went really deeply from my perspective. And I think a lot of celebrities didn't mind doing it because they didn't see that it was anything to do with them. There's nothing to do with me. It's a past life. They couldn't see, and I think because they didn't really understand the correlation. Like, probably one of the few people who got it was Toya Wilcox.
No, I was just about to say Toya Wilcox. You're literally just about to say it, because she's one of my. I love Toya Wilcox.
Yeah,
right?
Toya went back to me.
When I was a kid.
She was some kind of priestess, kind of in a past life, which made sense. And I think she was locked in some kind of tower, as I remember now. I liked her lifetime. And there was, H from Steps was really funny because he went really, really deeply. He went so deeply, which is really rare in regression, that you would get somebody who goes so deeply. When you bring them out of it, they have like, I have no idea where I've been. I don't remember any of it, but he didn't remember any of it.
Well, we're going to have to watch a bit of Toya. Can we watch a bit of Toya?
Yeah, I don't know where it is though. You'll have to have a look.
I think I've got a bit here. This is this from the TV show that you did afterwards with Schofield?
Mm.
Can you see it on screen?
No, not yet.
Oh, sorry, I'm not sharing it. This is fun. I'm enjoying this. It's like This Is Your Life.
Yeah, it is. These are your past lives.
I mean, it's fascinating and great to get your feedback on the show, while we're watching it. Yeah, have you got...
I can see it now. A little bit,
So this is the big budget version, right?
Yeah, no. Well, I don't know if this is the first or the second series. We'll see when I see this, the place, the location.
Okay.
If we'd been here before, who were we? Many people believe that under deep relaxation, they've recalled vivid and detailed memories of past lives. The question is it true?
Was it their decision to only use people on the ITV payroll in the opening titles?
Well, they were all the people who...
It's a joke, Andrea.
People who've been regressed.
Oh, right. Okay. Yeah.
Who probably were.
Yeah.
Some people believe that past life regression is a way of exploring the idea that we've all been here before. We'll be taking our celebrity into their subconscious using a form of...
See, I've got a problem with Philip Schofield doing this because he's got the voice of a little mouse. It needs to be someone like Tom Baker. Some people think that regression. It should be like, booming. But anyway, I'm being picky.
I think he wanted to do the shows.
Obviously, yeah.
Of hypnosis. The often startling revelations will be put to the test as our history detective follows the clues, looking for solid evidence. Are these memories of past lives or just fantasy? The experts will have their say, but in the end, it's up to you to decide. What do you believe? Have we been here before? On today's show, we'll be probing the subconscious mind of musician, writer, and actress Toya Wilcox. She's been through many changes in her varied career and is well known for her alternative views. But does Toya believe that she's been here before?
This life, Toya Wilcox, I have found incredibly frustrating. I have not enjoyed being a woman. I do believe that I've been made a woman as punishment for being a heartbreaker in my last life. I've always had a strong feeling about that. I feel as though I have a male soul trapped in a female body. I think there's nothing better than escaping what you're used to. I really dislike anything habitual, anything predictable. And I sometimes feel that being me is a prison sentence. And I know my critics would agree that, there's something quite awful about the thought of remaining one person forever. I really don't like it. Therefore, I'm very optimistic about departing this body.
Well, Toya is certainly no stranger to the concept of past lives, but what will we discover today?
I am so fascinated by what could happen today because anything could happen.
Andrea argues that there's a lot to be gained from accessing what she believes are past life memories.
So take a seat and lay down. The level at what you'll access a past life on in regression is very unique and individual to the person who's experiencing it. Some people it'll seem like they're watching a film, some people it'll seem like they're actually in the film, and sometimes it'll seem that the past life is more real than the reality you're living.
For the session to begin, Andrea will need to get Toya into a deeply relaxed state. She'll use a calming voice and relaxation techniques to open up Toya's subconscious mind, where she believes any past life memories would be held.
You feel totally relaxed, and you're just drifting and floating further and further back into your subconscious mind. What do you sense happening now?
I'm inside, it's dark. I have very little on, and that's deliberate. It's a way of keeping me there. I have rope around my waist. It's as if I have Hessian on. And I'm enclosed inside a dark room. I can see very little light.
Are there any windows in the room?
Very small.
And how long do you sense you've been in the room? Do you have a feeling of
Yes.
How long have you been in the room?
5 years.
Is it ever believed, or your belief, that you would ever leave that room?
No, I leave when I die.
And are you aware of having a name?
Naomi.
Did you have a family name?
Couldn't tell.
Do you know what year it is?
1405.
And where in the world are you?
Holland. I have been put in this room by my village.
Why has your village put you in the room?
So that I can absorb their sins. I'm an anchoress. I will die in this room.
And what is an anchoress?
I live within the walls of the church, and no one sees me.
Ooh.
People can talk to me through the window, which is just above my head. And they come and they tell me their secrets. I carry their sins.
What are the main sins that the people wish for you to absorb? What are their main sins?
Sexuality. Sometimes the girls come and tell me when they're in love.
Was this your choice to go into this room?
My mother had no choice and I had no choice.
Were you held in a higher regard than the other girls?
I just knew that I was never being groomed to be a mother, because it was intended I'd follow the last anchoress.
Is your mother allowed to visit you?
Yeah.
Does she come into the room?
No one comes into the room. So ill. I'm just ill. I'm thin. I have sores. My hair is falling out.
Mm-hmm. Do you sense why you're ill?
I'm incurable. I'm undernourished. I have sores. And I'm surrounded by my own filth. I'm just lying on the ground and I'm really weak.
Okay, I want you to go to the point now as your soul leaves your body. What are your thoughts now as your soul leaves your body?
To go, just want to go. I have no regrets. I have no desires. I have nothing to remain for.
And what decisions have you made about life based on that lifetime as the anchoress?
I want to see daylight as much as possible.
In a few moments, you're going to be coming back to the present, where every part of you is going to be back in the present. 7, 8, eyes open, 9, 10, wide awake. Hi. How do you feel?
That was weird. I feel as though I've actually taken a holiday from myself. I found it very strange and quite ironic that one of the lives I found was an anchoress, because I feel quite out of place in this life. I don't feel as though I'm feminine. I feel masculine. And also that I feel that I've never fitted in. So it's quite unusual or quite strange that I find a past life that really, really didn't fit in, to the point where, you know, you spend your life bricked up in a church.
Fascinating.
That was it, the anchoress.
Yeah, that was really interesting, because I think she might have been the Marquis de Sade, by the sounds of it.
I don't know who the Marquis de Sade is. Who's that?
You need to look it up. It's not very nice. It was when she said she was lying in her own filth, I was like, that sounds like the Marquis de Sade. It was interesting seeing Toya as well. Great seeing you. I mean, they really were production values, weren't they?
Yeah.
Wow.
No, you haven't seen the next bit where they do the reconstruction, because the next bit is where they take the celebrity and Philip says, we're going to show you bits of your past life now. And then they show it with a reconstruction. So then that was where the big budget came in, because now they're reconstructing it. But I personally preferred the ones that we did on This Morning, because I liked how we used Lionel, and I liked how that whole thing worked, and it was much nicer. And sometimes when we did This Morning, you know, like I think Darren Day's one was one of them, if anyone remembers Darren
Day. Oh my God.
Day. They tried to say we can't prove that this Lance Corporal or whoever he was, this soldier, existed. Well, what I loved about this show was because it was live and it was This Morning, and I would be back I'll be back next week. So I'll be back next Wednesday, and actually viewers would write in and go, actually, you'll find you're wrong. We found this guy and he does exist.
Well, that's called crowd journalism, crowdsourced journalism. That's brilliant.
Which was great, because when we tried to pitch a show in America, because obviously they're always looking at how can they make money out of this. And I said, well, you know, actually, if you give the power to the audience and say, you don't need a detective, you be the detectives, you find out what information you can about these people's past lives and prove whether these people genuinely existed. Actually, when you gave the power back to the audience, they actually would find the evidence, you know. And so some weeks I would come back and they go, oh, actually, we made a mistake last week. Some viewers have written in and actually that person did exist.
Well, let's do it again.
Yeah. And I do think we should do it again. And
do it again.
Yeah.
You know, have you ever done any live ones on your channel?
I would never do. I had, bizarrely, this will make you giggle. Right, I had a guy a few years ago. He's an agent and he's got a lot of the contracts for theatres in the UK and abroad. And this was before COVID. And he was like, Andrea, I want you to regress people in theatres. I went, I'm not doing it. I'm not regressing people live in theatres, because there's so many things that could go wrong. Yeah. And also you're seeing an edited version and it looks quite exciting. If you're sat there, most of these regressions, when I work with people privately, they take 2 hours, but those ones we did for TV, I gave them 3 hours. And there's lots of bits that are really boring. Yeah. And also some people speak really, really slowly. Yeah. So and he said, well, I really think you should do some stuff on TV, you know, like live events. And so I agreed, this will make you laugh, to do stand-up spiritual comedy. So I got some gigs from this guy, Peter, to do stand-up spiritual comedy. And then I broke my ankle and then COVID came. And I actually had some gigs in Dubai for stand-up spiritual comedy.
There's a spiritual therapist, a hypnotist, and a psychic in a bar. They had a great night. Yeah, spiritual stand-up comedy. I love it.
So I think the other thing is, and this is the other thing, as you know, just my experience of being a woman in this lifetime, and having started out as a hairdresser, and then I became a model, and then I was too gobby really for being a model. And I think the thing is, we've lived in an era of time where people have said you can't have all these skill sets, you can't be all these things to all people, and yet the truth of it is you can. You know, you don't need to die to reincarnate. You release that version of you in this lifetime and just decide who, you know, this is what I'm going to do now. You know, we don't have to die. We're not stuck in this paradigm of you get the gold watch and you're here for 20 years and you know, you can. I mean, I suppose I've done the same thing, because once you start doing this, other things are quite boring, really.
Well, there's no going back from this stuff. I mean, I remember I've had 10 careers, you know. I was a pilot, I was a stand-up comic. Yeah, I was an economist. I was
planes or helicopters?
Airplanes. I was a journalist. I fly helicopters as well. Yeah, I've done like loads of things, and I'm having this conversation with my kids at the moment, because three are now out of school, being homeschooled, right? And or being home educated, should I say, not schooled. Schooled actually is what you do to horses when you beat them into submission. That's what the word schooled actually means. So I'm trying to get rid of the word school, because that's what they do to the kids, funnily enough. And I've got twins, and they're very different. They're chalk and cheese, and one of them's like, no, I need to go because I need to get my exams, and I need that. And I said, why do you need the exams? Because I need to get a job. I was like, why do you need to get a job? He's like, because you have to have a job. And I was like, who says you have to have a job? And this is at the age of 11. I'm working hard on him. The other one couldn't give a shit. He's away with the fairies, but he's a genius, and he'll just come up with. In fact, this morning he drew something yesterday, and I thought, this is so good. It's got to be on a T-shirt. So I've printed it on a T-shirt, and it's going to get delivered for him. He's going to love it. Because I truly believe we can do anything, and anything, and the law of attraction. I've been using it my whole life. You know, when I was poor, I decided to be rich, and I was very quickly. When I was single, decided to get married, and I was very quickly. You know, all these things happen very, very quickly. And everybody laughed at me when I said I was going to join the RAF when I was a kid. They said, "There's no way you're going to get in," and I did. And it's you can do anything. People can, and this is what I'm trying to teach people. You can do anything you want. You just got to believe it, because the only thing that stops. And this is coming back to this idea that this is an entity controlled and created world. Because I wrote down earlier when you were talking about the entities latching onto the trauma inside us. I see the trauma inside us as a kind of engine that drives forward for them. Sorry, go on.
I think this is the problem. You know, when you having worked with a lot of really successful businessmen over the years and taken them back to the trauma in their childhood, you know, you often find either there was some trauma, you know, and especially when you've got brothers and you see, you know, even in my own family, in my mum's side of the family, you know, I endlessly have compassion for my granddad, who I never met, because I see him as this child who had an older brother. The mother died. They got sent to war. You know, they both served in war. But, you know, my granddad was younger, and he, goodness knows what he saw in the war, but he came back as a violent alcoholic, and he beat my grandmother up all the time. And she was she had 15 children. My mum was one of 15 children. Although I don't condone what my granddad did, I understand what happened to him. I understand that he either got taken over by violent, aggressive entities. Meanwhile, his brother became very, very successful. And, you know, in the 40s and 50s was coming to visit his brother's children in a Rolls Royce. He'd made it. He'd made a lot of money and become very successful. Yes, he was, by all accounts, maybe a bit of a womanizer, but he'd become, you know, very successful, whereas my grandfather became this violent alcoholic and got thrown out of the house in the end by the youngest children because he was too violent and aggressive to my grandmother to live with. You know, but it's understanding from my perspective that he probably got taken over by entities. He probably didn't have any capacity, as did no men in the First and Second World War, to deal with, and I've seen this in Regression, you know, they were duped into going to war. They had no concept of the trauma of what they were going to do. And then they were going to kill innocent people from other countries that they had no personal karma with. You know, you're being told by the wealthy elite who are sat in the office having a cigarette to go, you know, to these other countries and kill innocent people.
This is why I resigned from the RAF.
Yeah.
Because once I realized that's what I was actually being trained to do, I was like, and my dad had just died before. And I was like, I really knew the pain of death. And I was like, I can't inflict that on anybody. That's insanity.
Yeah. And
I've got nothing against any service people at all. You know, I'm very glad that there are brilliant, amazing people in the military. I just want to make that clear. There are some amazing people in the military, and I'm very grateful for lots of them. But for me, I was like, no, I can't. My soul couldn't take it. I had to leave.
Yeah, and you know, this has what people don't understand is what you have done and experienced has complications beyond this lifetime, you know, into the galactic, you know, cosmos and universe, because, you know, we are not the only planet in the universe, we're not the only dimension, we're not the only reality. There's a lot of other dimensions and realities playing out. We are crucial, we are the planet with free will choice, and you can use that free will choice, and you are here to learn, grow and evolve. And what are you going to learn? And, you know, do you want the responsibility? And then you're going to have to deal with your own guilt, shame of what you've done. And, you know, that's what I spend most of my time doing, is helping people release this deep-seated guilt and shame, which will, holding guilt and shame in your physical body, shame's the hardest thing to get rid of, but that will vibrate the molecules in your body to a disharmonious frequency, which will draw in sickness and illness into your body, and it's a dis-ease. So you can use allopathic medicine if you want, but the origin of your issue is deep in your subconscious mind, and it's got to be healed.
And the entities are happy about that. They want that to continue because they're feeding off it. So you've got this perpetual motion. Talking of entities, something you said earlier was something popped up, because in this kind of telling the truth world that we're trying to move into, there have been many pitfalls on the way for people that have stood up to speak truth. And even recently, there have been some well-known people starting to disagree with each other, shall we say, because of entities coming in and giving false information and doing all of this kind of stuff. And I think one of the things I try really hard to do with this show is to just I don't want to talk about personalities in particular. I'm not interested in putting anybody down. I'm only interested in finding out the truth and exploring what it means to be human in this world right now, especially right now because of what we're going through, because it's just the most extraordinary time ever. Right? So
well, apparently, here's something, where have I written it down? I can probably remember it. Okay, the average person lives 26,000 days. Okay, we're at the end of the 26,000
year cycle,
equinox cycle, which ended, some say, around 2012, but we're not out by many years, aren't we, really? I mean, nobody can disagree on the planet right now that some right old crap's going on, you know, and that nothing is what it seems. And it is the great potential, and we can only say potential, awakening, because for us it is an awakening. And, you know, we are perhaps on the front line of assisting people in their awakening. And, you know, in that process, we're like, you've got to forgive yourself, you've got to let this go. It's like, oh, how could I have not seen? It's like, oh, get over yourself, forgive yourself, let this go. You know, we're moving into a higher frequency now. I believe there will be new leaders, you know, taking place, whether some of us on this, you know, awakening find ourselves in positions within our communities of leadership to assist humanity. But, and then we'll go back to what leaders were truly meant to be. You know, in ancient, way back times, the leaders were chosen by the people who had the highest frequency to lead those people. They didn't want to be leaders. They just held the highest vibration of integrity and discernment. And wisdom to assist that community, and therefore they became the leader, not by birthright or by money.
We need more wise old women, you see. I'm just thinking of Blackadder there. I'm a wise woman. Are you really? I could talk about this all day, Andrea, but I do have something to do in half an hour, and I've got to have to go. But it's really fascinating.
Fun.
Oh, it's great. It's just flown by. But I just want to show everybody where they can get a hold of you, which is give me a second. As you can see, this is a professional show. There we go. That's your website, isn't it?
Yes, my old-fashioned website.
Unless it's somebody pretending to be you.
I've had that. I've had a woman pretending to be me. ITV had to threaten her. Well, the scary thing was she was doing regression pretending to be me. But
this happens a lot. This happens a lot. People, especially when you're famous, you get copied left, right, and centre. You've probably got some lookalikes out there really pissed off you're not on TV anymore because they're not earning anything.
Yeah, I think this woman is probably one of those. I mean, I feel like I've done quite well to navigate my ways through this whole experience and still be grounded and sane. And I think it is the cosmic giggle that and I think comedy is so important. Like, it's our ability to laugh at this. You know, like you said when we spoke the other day, that we both realised we've crossed paths in
Cheshire.
Cheshire back in the day, because I think you said we're the same age, aren't we, more or less?
I think so. I'm 37. How old are you?
Oh, I'm 25.
Well, it's fun though. Everybody not everybody, but a lot of people that have come on here and I've had these amazing conversations with, we are linked in some way. You know, I had Julia Fairfax on the other week, and her dad was in the RAF, and she started talking about going to this airfield, and I went, "Was that Marshall's airfield in Cambridge?" She went, "Yes, my dad was the air traffic controller." I said, "Well, that's where I first flew in 1982." She went, "He was the air traffic controller." It's just crazy stuff like that. So yes, I think we all crossed paths before, and we're all part of this one consciousness. But it does feel like the split obviously is hugely clear.
I think we can end this karma now. This is the end of this 26,000 year cycle. Yeah. And it's like, we're on the stage. It's the pantomime play, because not everybody knows what a pantomime is unless you're English.
Behind you.
It's a cosmic pantomime. We're all about to take a bow, you know, and exit stage left or right, or put a new outfit on.
Yeah, the world is but a stage, and the world is a stage, and we're all but players on it. I can't remember the exact quote, but that wasn't Shakespeare, by the way.
No.
He never wrote. Shakespeare didn't write fuck all.
Yeah, wasn't it Francis Bacon?
I think so. Yeah, I mean they're amazing pieces of work. Don't get me wrong. Midsummer Night's Dream is the greatest thing ever written, as far as I'm concerned. But so optimism. You are optimistic. You feel that we're going to a good place, Andrea.
I think you're going to where you're a vibrational match to, which is a very different thing.
Well, some people are going to fucking Coventry then with a shovel of shit up their ass, because there's some crazy people out there.
You're going to where it really is true. You are going to where you're a vibrational match to, and you can't fake it. You know, you can't pretend to be a vibration you're not. You can be scanned in the universe by who you are and what you are. And, you know, it's like being caught with no clothes on. You can't hide anything. Your signature vibration and frequency of your mind thinking that you can't hide who you truly are in the cosmos.
No, I was just having a flashback to me getting into bed last night, taking off all my clothes, and then because there's usually entities in the room and I have to deal with them. And I'm like, fuck it, you've seen it all before anyway. I'll just get it. It's like when my mum first told me that God was everywhere, and I was like, what, even in the Yorkshire pudding? She's like, yeah. I was like, no escape.
Well, you see, when I was a child, I can see where my problem started, because my mum would say good night and God bless. I'm like, night, night. And she went, say God bless. I'm like, night, night. She'd say God bless. I'm like, no, because I realized, I knew that God was inside me, that I was part of this whole thing. So I wasn't having any of it.
Well, I was the same. I couldn't go to church. I couldn't. Well, I did go to church, but I soon learned that no, I'm surrounded by demons here, and I couldn't buy into any. I've never been able to buy into the dogma at all. You know, even when I say the Lord's Prayer, and I say that a lot, I don't say Amen, because I know what Amen really means. And so, and then when I see really nice people on YouTube saying prayers and stuff, and they all do the big Amen at the end, I'm like, you really haven't looked into this. And I went to a funeral here in Ireland recently, and the speed that they say the Lord's Prayer, they're not paying attention to those words at all. They just got it beaten into them by priests when they were 4 years old, and they're not thinking about the words. And that's what I don't like. It's spiritual unconsciousness, where people are going through the ropes, they're going through the motions, they're saying all the things that they learned from that's been passed on to them, or they've been told to say. They don't even know why they're saying it or what it means or anything, and it's all part of the trap.
Yeah, and I think the thing is, you know, we've got all these perceptions of what we perceive an intelligent person looks like. You have to look like this to be wise. You know, why is a fat bald man the only pathway to God? You know, like,
because us fat bald men are very important.
We're not bald yet.
Going. I'm just getting ahead.
But you know, we can heal our bodies. We genuinely can heal our body. I mean, I'm an example of it. I healed my ankle, I've healed myself of polycystic ovaries, I've healed myself of precancerous cells on my cervix, had to go into past lives, had to go into healing trauma to do that. I've done it with clients. That's what I've done for 22 years now. And you know, this work has not taken its toll on me, as in, you know, I've still been able to keep my own vibration high. You can't do this work 8 hours a day. It will take you down. You cannot do that. You have to maintain your own well-being. You have to have huge levels of integrity. And, you know, whether I relate in some ways to Toya's life as an anchoress, in this lifetime, I haven't got married and I haven't had children. I've literally been doing this work. You know, and maybe that's for some past life reasons as well that I haven't completely got to the bottom of, although I think I have recently, that I had to look at some, you see, to end it with, in the beginning, people will see past lives where people have done terrible things to them. But as you evolve, you have to be, okay, you know, what have I done? You know, what shadow stuff did I do in other lifetimes to understand why all the things I would have liked in this lifetime, even though I have done all the secret positive affirmations, and to huge degrees, some of them have been successful. What is the story running in my subconscious that I cannot get to, of why every time I say certain things that I would like for my life, which seem like a normal rite of passage for the average person, why can I not achieve those things? And then you will see your shadow lives that you've had to heal and clear. And then also we're at the end of this cycle, and so perhaps amazing things are going to happen for a lot of us now, and we're going to find our bodies rejuvenating, perhaps all kinds of things are within potential that, you know, I mean, there's so many amazing things I could share, but we'll share those on another day.
Yeah, well, you know, there's more to talk about, and I hope we do get to get rejuvenated, because I've just signed up to a Muay Thai class, and I'm really not looking forward to it now because it's going to be very hard.
What's that? What do you do in that?
Thai kickboxing.
Oh, well, that'll be good. It'll help you channel your chi.
Well, that's why I'm going. Yeah.
But I think the key to all this is meditation for people. They've got to be, you know, the minute you start meditating, and it's not just sitting there going ning, ning, ning into oblivion. I think you can do that at the end, but I think you really need to do guided meditations. I've got a particularly nice guided meditation.
That's a nice segue. It's like you're almost a professional broadcaster or something. That's you've done this before.
Listen to for free, and if you happen to like the free one, there's a lovely Earth Peace meditation that I recorded in Sedona in Arizona back in the day. You can then down a longer one, which is 43 minutes. I think you need guided meditations in the beginning to get inside your inner self.
I find them very, very useful. I have found guided meditations very, very useful just to get you there, especially because, you know, especially if you're running around and you're busy. the idea of sitting down in silence, sometimes I'm like, just avoid that. I'll avoid it. But you pop one of those on. Great idea.
Yeah, and then you've got, alpha, beta, theta, delta states of mind, which I've got a chart explaining that on my website.
Oh, I'm going to ask you a question then. I don't think I've ever said this on the channel before. When I was in the RAF, they put me into one of these science fiction rooms, and it was like a colander on my head with loads of things coming out of it. It was like a brainwave test.
Do they really do that?
Huh?
Do they really do that?
Yeah.
Wow.
And I got told I had the strongest alpha waves they'd ever seen, and I'm like, what is that good? I don't know. I still don't know.
Well, alpha is the conscious mind. So you've got alpha, beta, theta, delta. So probably
sorry, they're coronavirus variants, aren't they?
yes, and they're coronavirus. Well, they're the frequencies they're beaming. It's the brainwave frequencies they're using to emit from the television.
This video might not make it to YouTube now. Yeah.
Oh, can you edit that bit out?
No, I don't do editing. I'll just take a risk.
I think, everything is frequency. And, I mean, you and I remember, do you remember that TV program when we were kids? They told you the truth, the Why Don't You gang. What did they
Why
tell
don't you switch off the television set and go do something less boring instead? I'm like, what are you you're telling, you're a TV program telling me to stop watching TV. So I did. I went out and started doing stuff. Built dams, airplanes, jumped off roofs, did all sorts. Thanks. Why don't you? They don't play that anymore. What were they telling us that I need to know about that you're trying to tell me?
That's it, really.
Yeah.
Use discernment in what you watch, and the rest of the time, get out there and connect with real people.
That's it. It's pretty simple, but I've not been on an airplane. I've not flown into another country for 2 years now.
Me neither. I was a bit worried about putting white on because I thought I might be the same color as my top because I've not seen sunshine for so long.
2 years ago, I was brown, and it's just I've seen none. I'm in England. There's Ireland. There's none here.
Yeah,
None.
This is the least traveling I've done since I was 18. Although I have managed to do, even in the lockdown year, I did 20,000 miles.
That's not bad going. Cool. Right, everybody. There's the website.
Thank
Andrea.
you. Thank you, Mark.
No, it's been a pleasure talking to you. Thanks for sharing all those insights and letting us watch those shows.
Shall I regress you?
Yeah, I'd like you to. Yeah. I did a lot. Well, I was going to say this earlier. When I first started my channel, I did a past life regression on the channel. Yeah. And then somebody told me, "Oh, you can't do that because that's when the entities get in and all of this." And I was like, "Well, I don't. Like I said, I just throw myself in front of the bus. I don't care." But it was really interesting because I also did some work with the same guy that did that the other day. And I do come out of these going, "Did I just make all that up?" It is really, really interesting, and then it stays with you. And so many interesting things happen from that because that was my first past life regression that are still that are here all the time with me, and I'm working through that, and I have a relationship with that past life that I never even knew existed before.
Yeah, the whole thing is, I mean, I'm better now that, that footage you showed was my early years, and I've got more skilled over the years. And it really is the emotional wisdom and skill of the therapist, and not all therapists are made equal. And so it's your ability to use your psychological insight and your intuition to really help that person put all the threads together, linked to this lifetime, and clear it to the 0 point field, because that's really what you're trying to do, get it back to the 0 point field so it's not affecting them. And the same within a child, the same with the ancestral program. So if you've got an issue with ancestral issues, like patterning of certain illnesses in the family, then often there's usually a past life of an ancestor that we need to see and clear that lineage.
Yeah, well, I'm up for it, but we're not going to do it now, are we? Because I haven't got time. But
no, we'll have to fly because you can't do it over the internet. I can read the emotional Akashic records over the internet, but regression, do not. And I know there's people doing it, but do not go to people who do actual regression over the internet and are lowering your brain frequencies. Do not do that over the internet, because it could cut off and that person is not in the room to help.
Yeah, I'd not thought of that.
Yeah.
A very real
integrity.
Yes. Whew. Well, I have taken a few too many risks then. Gonna have to go. Thank you very much. Great to see you. Great to meet you. Thanks everybody for watching. Go and see Anne. Go to our website and have a lovely weekend, the rest of it. And thanks for joining me on a Saturday.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.